You're listening to the Tony Conley Morning Show and more compelling talk radio, 1320 WILS, 1320WILS.com. Fast food has long been linked to obesity, but a new study suggests that it may also affect children's educational achievement. The study was led by Kelly Pertel at Ohio State University, and it tracks students between 5th and 8th grade when students are assessed in reading, math, and science. Let's learn a little bit more about this from Dr. Gerald Edelman, who's a medical expert for 1320 WILS. He's an oncologist and the author of Sugar Rehab, which details the nation's addiction to hidden sugar. We'll get his website here in just a bit. Dr. Edelman, how are you?
Good morning. I'm happy to be with you.
Tell us about this study.
Sure. So it's a study that basically correlated eating, quote, junk food with, your performance academically. It doesn't really address the issue of why, but I don't have any doubt that kids that are eating junk food are underperforming because we know, I think it's the sugar that's the culprit, by the way.
Yeah.
And so, on a Big Mac, right? So Big Mac is surrounded by processed white flour, and that essentially to the body is sugar. So I don't think it's the meat that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the sugar and the processed flour.
Now
go
continue your thought, please.
Yeah, so there's been some recent studies that show that sugar's actually a villain in terms of causing memory loss and Alzheimer's. We know it causes obesity and we know it causes diabetes. And we're being swamped with sugar in our food. So in my book, I teach people how to read labels so they understand exactly how much sugar there is in a food product. And I think when you really are aware of it, like I am, you kind of think of it in terms of they're kind of converting all of us into diabetics because our blood sugars are running high throughout the day, and that's correlated with poor performance and memory and development of some neurologic toxicity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, that type of thing.
What's interesting about this study is researchers used the data from early childhood kindergarten, a company, and the national survey covered about 12,000 students from pre-K to the 5th grade, and the students were asked how much fat they had eaten. And what was interesting is these assessments, the survey wasn't conducted the same week they were taking the academic assessments, Dr. Edelman. So apparently what they had eaten over the past week or month or whatever had led up to this low performance, just as you were speaking of.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to, when you do a study like that, with a population-based study, it's pretty hard to look at precise cause and effect. There's just too many variables. But what we do, so you have to kind of look at what you do know, and what we do know is that these blood sugar levels that we're just having high blood sugar levels throughout the day because of all the sugar they're putting in food. We do know that causes disease and memory loss and things like that. So I can't tell you with 100% certainty based on this study that that's the cause and effect. What I can tell you is that every patient of mine and every friend of mine that's followed the rules in my book has lost weight, felt better, and performed better, mentally. So that's just the data that I have. And I think there's a path to go for your listeners. So start with that.
Are we addicted to sugar?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And we're addicted because of the hidden sugar. Most people I talk to, they immediately say, well, I don't eat, cookies, I don't eat chocolate, I don't drink soda, But the thing is, when you start looking at foods that in the grocery store and you look at sugars per serving, you find out that most of them have more than about 3 or 4 sugar cubes per serving. And like a Coke has 44 grams, there's 4 grams of sugar in a sugar cube, so that's 10 sugar cubes. Well, guess what? A lot of those protein drinks that are being marketed to us, a lot of yogurts and things like that have equivalent amount of sugar cubes in them. So what I'd like your listeners to do is, of course, grab the book, Sugar Rehab. Can I give a plug for my website?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So it's drjerrys.com. It's drjerrys.com. They can order it from there. But there's a lot of links. I think you and I have spoken before. We've recorded them, and they can educate themselves about what we're talking about here with sugar. Sugar is definitely a toxin, and we're being swamped with it, and I want people to be aware of that.
Dr. Edelman, how do we wean ourselves?
Well, the first thing you start doing is you train yourself to look at sugars per serving and the ingredients and ignore everything else, unless your doctor told you to restrict salt or something weird. But for most people can just look at sugars per serving. Don't buy anything with more than 2 grams of sugar per serving in it, and don't think beyond that. Eat when you're hungry and don't eat when you're not. That's just as simple as message that my book relays. I've done the work. I've listed everything out in the book, but that's how you do it. And what happens is when you start eating that way, when you finally do so-called treat yourself with a couple bites of ice cream or a chocolate bar, whatever, it just hits you as an incredibly sweet product. I mean, you start thinking, why can't they sweeten it with, a quarter of the sugar that they're using?
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with probably the sugar industry and, all the economics and stuff. But it's very important. I am a doctor, and I do want people to have good health. I want them to perform to their maximum. There's a lot of wellness centers cropping up around the country, and I'm really concerned about it because I think there's a lot of quackery involved, and the basic thing that you and I are talking about is 85% of wellness. You don't need to go to somebody and buy all these products and go through all their blood tests and stuff. Just start training yourself to avoid blood sugar spikes, and you're going to laugh at this, but weight training. That combination is just killer good for your health.
Dr. Gerald Edelman is a medical expert for 1320 WILS and Fox News Radio, and the website you can find his information about Sugar Rehab is sugarrehabbook.com. Thanks so much, sir.
You bet. Good talking to you.
And thank you for listening to the Tony Conley Morning Show on 1320 WILS and 1320WILS.com.